Hello, everybody. My name is Sana Manjeshwar, and I am so humbled to be with this amazing panel. Actually, before we begin, I do need the clicker. That's one thing I forgot. Sorry, forgive me. If you wouldn't mind, thank you so much. So the name of our panel today is State of the AAPI Community, thank you, in the US and the need and impact of proactive and inclusive leadership. And wow, what a way to introduce this topic. So powerful. So my name is Sana Manjeshwar. I'm the leader of Chevron's ombuds program. And if anyone knows what an ombuds is, I'm happy to have a conversation with you afterwards about that. And I'm joined by our esteemed panel, starting with my right, is Ravi Aurora, Senior Vice President in Mastercard, Global Public Policy and Indo-Pacific Policy Operations. He's also responsible for the global leadership, along with policy operations, and serves on various boards, including the US-Bangladesh Alliance and US-India Friendship Alliance. To his left is Bhavana Boggs, a Senior Vice President and Associate General Counsel at Marriott International. And Bhavana is a Senior Vice President Associate at Marriott. In addition to her responsibilities as legal counsel, she leads the team and is executive sponsor for Asian Pacific Islander Associate Resource Group at Marriott. And then to my right is TJ Castro Lim, Managing Director and Head of Digital Platforms in the US private bank JP Morgan. He is also the active JP Morgan Asian Leadership Network leader and LGBTQAI+ Pride Network, and outside of JP Morgan, in his spare time, board member of Reaching Out to MBA Rumba. And to my left, Handel Lee. He's international partner at King and Wood Mallesons. And he's also an international attorney and property developer and one of the first American lawyers to establish a Chinese practice in the US. And to his left is Shihana Mohamed. Shihana Mohamed is the Human Resources Policy Officer in the International Civic Service of the United Nations, and her portfolio includes gender, geographic balance, and diversity of the workforce in the UN system, with a standing mandate from the General Assembly of the United Nations. She's also the founder of the UN Asia Network for Diversity and Inclusion. Thank you all for joining us here today. So first, I recognize we had a level set here as to what is the state of the AAPI in the US. I'll share some humbling facts that are impacting our AAPI community today. We all know socioeconomic disparity in the AAPI community has widened in the pandemic. But as I was doing my research, it is actually quite fascinating to know our representation of AAPI in America is approaching 7% in the US. And Asians are projected to be the largest immigrant group of 38% of immigrants to the US by 2055. This makes the awareness of communities' inequities and our need to truly, as Maria mentioned, truly activate inclusion and diversity for all in society and discuss what we can do to activate this for everyone is increasingly important today. As the US comes out of the pandemic, here are some humbling statistics. We talk about the perpetual foreigner syndrome, recently highlighted by the McKinsey study. Despite being here for many generations, many Asians still feel as if they are the perpetual foreigner. There's also the model minority myth, which I'm sure you'll hear about later today as well. That unfortunately people do have this mistaken stigma that all Asians must be wealthy. We know that this is not true. We also have recognized that there's an increasing anti-Asian sentiment, 339% increase in anti-Asian hate crimes in the US in 2022 alone. So with this, we recognize increasing challenges around the mental health stigma, seeking help. We truly want to identify, recognizing these opportunities, what can we do about it? What can we truly do to move forward? And this is what our panel is here to do today and share with you all. So moving on to our next slide. I'd like to start with Bhavana. Did I press it? Sorry. There we are. So I'll start with Bhavana. How does your company or organization promote and facilitate proactive and inclusive leadership? And what have you found to be most helpful and why?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Asia Society and Chris for hosting this really important conversation. When I joined Marriott 24 years ago, I was struck by the sense of inclusiveness and welcoming. Now, we are a hospitality company, but it is so much more than that. Putting people first is a core value at the company, and it has been in place for 90-plus years. And this means putting everyone who interacts with our company first. And providing this sense of inclusiveness for everyone, whether it's our employees, whom we call associates, our guests, our owners, hotel owners, our vendors, suppliers. We want to bring a sense of community to everyone and to really value and respect individuals and their individual contributions. But this sense of inclusiveness does not take place overnight, and it really has to be intentional. So so we start at the top. Our Marriott Board of Directors has a Inclusion and Social Impact Committee that has been in place for 15-plus years, and they oversee the strategy and provide guidance to both the board and the executive committee on issues of diversity, inclusion, associate well-being, and other social impact issues. And then our senior leadership puts in place programs and creates accountability at every level of the organization. We also, our senior leaders, 50% of our CEO's senior leadership team is diverse. Our board is 50% diverse, and many members of our senior leadership team are of Asian background. So we have many programs to drive accountability throughout the organization, to develop and make sure that we are continuing this culture of inclusiveness and create opportunities for everyone within the organization. I think what I really love about Marriott is that we have individuals who started out in roles of housekeeping at the front desk, who are now general managers and senior executives within the company. So inherently, we have all these role models for everyone to then develop their careers. Our focus is really about creating a sense of belonging, creating a sense of inclusiveness, and making sure that we have programs that allow people to develop their professional careers and develop personally.
Thank you, Bhavana. TJ.
Sounds good. I echo all of those sentiments, right? So I think the common theme, right? So Chris welcomed us, Maria, Martin. I think, and even in your comments, it's really about people. Like we are a bank, so I'm proudly representing JP Morgan. People think of us as part of the financial services firm, but in any organization, any team, any society, it's always about people. So the way that I would say like there are a couple of things I would highlight for JP Morgan on that strategy and how we promote it is it's really mind and heart. On the mind side of things, it's really metrics, right? So we if you can't measure it, if you can't see it, if you can't track it, you can't be accountable for it. So one of the things that we are working on is making sure that we have very clear dashboards that are reviewed with our senior executives, with every manager, on how they're doing in terms of their pipeline, how they're doing in terms of diversity within their teams, and how those people are progressing within the organization. That's the mind part of things, which I would say is like super important, but it's only as important if you can mix it with the heart of it, the humanity of it. Because numbers will just be numbers if you can't translate it to the human aspect of it. The way that we try to do it is what we're now internally calling the power of perspective. Everyone in this, in a human sense, we all have our personal histories. We bring that to work. I think the pandemic has really opened that door for us to have that honest dialogue, that vulnerable conversation, and it needs to start at the top. So for us, the power of perspective means that our leaders need to be more human to their people. So that means being okay with hearing leaders saying, I am not okay today. I am not okay that there's not enough Asians in our boardroom. I'm not okay that there's not enough diverse representation in our board. I'm not okay with what's happening in society. Those are the things that we think about, but oftentimes don't talk about at work. And so for us, like, to make that more tangible, when we have our senior leadership meeting, there's always going to be a power of perspective conversation. We pick a bunch of senior leaders to talk through their personal histories, their narratives, and their learnings. And that, I think, opens up the door for belonging for everyone. So it's not focused on the traditional notions of diversity of like race, sexual orientation, etc. All of those are included, but it also is about everyone's journeys, right? So like death, like people like experiencing pain because of the loss of a child, or a child is going through something health-wise. All of those emotions are humanly relatable and are important to actually make connections. So for us, those are the two things, which is the mind and the heart aspect.
Thank you, TJ. So we've heard about belonging and metrics, so powerful. Shihana, what are you doing within the United Nations?
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Sana. And I'm very thrilled to be here in the company of the people who think alike and work towards the same goals. United Nations is not different from the outside world. We have an agreed leadership model which includes inclusivity, also it respects diversity, and also it promotes a collaborative approach, collective thinking. This meant to be applicable to all individuals. It's not only Secretary General. So it's inbuilt in the UN Charter. I brought a copy of the UN Charter. So it's online too. So the parameters for this leadership framework is set in the UN Charter 76 years ago. There are articles specifically talking about diversity, inclusivity, and collective thinking. First one, when you go into the Charter, what you see is respect for human rights, individuals' rights. So we are not there, the ideal situation within the organization. We promote all the instruments, legal instruments for the outside, but still we have a lot to do inside. We have racism, it's deep-rooted, it's multidimensional. Specifically for Asians, we have our specific issues. Then for the gender diversity, also we have Article 108. It talks about recognition of contribution, both sides, men and women, and participation in the work of the organization. That we had worked a lot all the years. Sometimes we lose track of the geographical diversity when you focus on gender, then end up having more one regional group, mostly north, so we also aware of it. Then we have another article, 101.3. It promotes recruitment from wider geographical distribution, where we are really lacking. For example, Asians only 19%. In the whole UN organization. It's not one organization. There are more than 30 organizations under the umbrella of UN system. So while outside world, in the global population, more than half of the population is in Asia and Pacific. but UN doesn't represent that. It's 19%. In the senior level, it's only 14%. These all facts have been identified by, documented. Even my portfolio also documents and goes to the General Assembly. SG recently talked about it, Asian population going down in senior levels and also general population of staff. So that's something we have to work on it. It's a collective work. Then what I like about it, I'm privileged to be in the UN, of course, but I could do more. We all could do more. We could have more representation. While having said that, I also see the more space is now allocated for staff interest groups. It was not 20 years ago, it was not that. That's how we could create an interest group for the Asia and Pacific personnel. It happened 3 years ago, but we did a lot of groundwork. So that bridges the issues between staff and the management, and also sees the patterns and the policy gaps and also institutional and structural barriers for such an equitable, ideal position that we are striving here. So just summarize that, then I can go on. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
I'm just impressed that you knew how to rattle off those. I'm an attorney, and I wouldn't have remembered half of those rules. And I appreciate your recognition, again, of it being a journey, right? We're all in this journey together to advance diversity and inclusion within our population. Handel.
Thank you, Sana. I am a lawyer, and I'm going to take off my lawyer hat. But just a point of clarification, I was also one of the first U.S. lawyers to set up a law firm in China for the firm Skadden Arps back in 1991. But I'm taking off that hat because I'm going to talk to you from the point of view of my position as vice chair of the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. The Smithsonian is the largest museum complex in the world. It is the keeper of America's history and culture. And most of its major museums, national museums, are located on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., which is also referred to as America's front lawn. The Smithsonian is actually, in many ways, a microcosm of America. There is not one permanent Asian Pacific American exhibition in any Smithsonian museum. We are invisible, and that's a big issue. And as Chris mentioned in his opening remarks, visibility matters. I joined the board of the Smithsonian Asia Pacific American Center in late 2019, and I didn't know much about it, and I was surprised to find out that there was nothing on the National Mall or in any Smithsonian museum dedicated to our history in America. So at my first board meeting, there was a discussion on, hey, establishing a gallery to Asian Pacific American history in one of the existing Smithsonian museums. And I raised my hand and said, why a gallery? Why a gallery? What about a museum? We are 7% of the world, the United States population, the fastest growing minority group. Why don't we talk about establishing a museum? And the director at that time of APAC said, oh, Handel, we were told we can't use the M word. I said, what? The M word? Someone told you, who told you that? Within the Smithsonian at leadership. And I said, and what was your response? Did we just take that like good, quiet Asian Americans? Take a little pat on the head, and maybe you can have a gallery, but don't use the M word. So that to me was, it got me very angry. I started to agitate. Again, but I was shocked that the Smithsonian, again, being microcosm of America, well, we're invisible. And they expected us, and I think they treated the Asian Pacific Americans with all those stereotypes of the model minority. You guys are okay. Take a little gallery and go away, and you won't get mad. You won't protest, or you won't. Yeah. Anyway, so I started agitating. Another lawyer on the board started agitating, and we finally got to the new secretary, Lonnie Bunch, who was a great man, administrator, and curator, and he was the first director of the African American Museum at the Smithsonian, and we had a meeting with him, and we had been agitating for a while, but he at the meeting said, "Okay, you can use the M word," and we will. He said, "I will support the eventual establishment of a national museum for Asian Pacific Americans." However, the Smithsonian is not allowed to publicly support or come out to advocate for any museum that has not yet been authorized by Congress. All right, so all Smithsonian museums, National Museum, must be authorized by an act of Congress, which was very frustrating, but at least we made progress within the Smithsonian. We are still agitating for more resources, more visibility within the Smithsonian environment. But I was told that we are not allowed to go out and build support for a national museum or even raise awareness. So I went out and set up a 501c3 called Friends of the National Asian Pacific American Museum, and its mission is to garner the nationwide awareness and support for this national museum and advocate for authorization by Congress for this museum. And I forgot to take off my Smithsonian hat because I can't say that with my Smithsonian hat on. I have my friend's hat on when I say that. So we need to navigate within the Smithsonian. We need to advocate within the Smithsonian for more resources and prominence and visibility for Asian Pacific American history and culture. And certainly the bigger mission is to obtain congressional authorization for this national museum on the National Mall, our place on the mall to present Asian Pacific American history as an essential, quintessential part of America's story and American history. And symbolically, that museum on the mall and substantively goes very far to deal with and challenge those inappropriate misconceptions about Asian Pacific Americans, perpetual foreigner, model minority, and so this is what we are doing.
Thank you so much. I just want to pause there for a moment. Thank you for trailblazing and recognizing that visibility. Thank you. It's exhausting. It can be exhausting, but as Maria pointed out, we need to move forward, and you are carrying forward for generations before us, so thank you. Ravi, last but not least on this question.
Okay. Great, thank you. Sana, thank you very much. Thanks again to Chris, Asia Society, for having us in this 15th year. I mean, I have had the fortune of attending quite a few of the forums over the years, and I think you always walk away with so much, right? I mean, there's so much energy, passion, listening to all the various speakers. So, and great to be among such a great group of panelists as well. So I think, look, Mastercard, I've been, very fortunate. It's a phenomenal, it's all about culture, values, right, that the company has. I've been very fortunate to be there now. It's crossed 25 years, 26 years very soon. And and when I think about it as a company, our company has a commitment, to creating that workplace where everybody has equal access, to be able to connect their greatest passions to their fullest potential. And that's really what is important. And, and it's about leadership with decency, and inclusion. And when we talk about inclusion, and in terms of that inclusive culture that we've all touched upon and talked about, I think it is where for us, inclusion. I think we see it as a core at Mastercard as a leadership skill. That's kind of required of everybody needs to foster that. Because when we do that right, it's good not only for our business, but also for our communities that we operate in, around the world. Now, what does that translate to? It is about, fostering those open dialogues, right? Because listening to and respecting those opinions. It is about seeking that missing perspective, so that way, avoiding those blind spots, right? So that everybody's voice is heard. Is that creating that sense of belonging, supporting that, individual as a whole. Because, kind of engaging authentically with every individual and supporting their career development. And, a culture of direct feedback, because that's also very important. Open, honest, direct feedback. Now, Bhavana also mentioned, and sure, goes across all of our organization. I'm very proud to say, just about, I think earlier this month, Diversity Inc. came out with their, top 50 rankings, and Mastercard was number 1 this year in terms of diversity. And we've climbed up the ranks. I remember many years ago, I think we were in the, 40s, then to 20s. Then I think last year we were number 2, and this year number 1. So which is, I think, a testament to the leadership, our board is, 64% of our board, identifies themselves as, ethnically, diverse, right? And I'm looking at some stats that as racially and ethnically diverse. 45% of our global board, independent directors, are Asian. When you look at, our own management, 40% of our management committee is Asian. So there's and as a company, I think that, we even, going back to Diversity Inc. this year, as part of their special list, we were rated number 1 as top companies for Asian executives. So all of that comes from having, a very cohesive and, strategy and a very purposeful strategy around inclusion, education, awareness, right? We have many programs. We have, and also that when we implement these programs, it has to be localized. There's no one-size-fits-all. You have to look at, every region, every market, and come with some kind of local perspectives to what matters, right? And that is something that we take very seriously, because our programs are driven both functionally, regionally, on a local level. And, some of the initiatives, Anna, is like, you talked about the Asian hate crimes having gone up, right? We have an initiative around In Solidarity. It's around standing against racism and advancing equal opportunity. So even with, at the onset of the Asian crimes that we saw post-COVID, Mastercard, committed $335,000 specifically targeted to organizations, NGOs, and others, that were very much active in that space, to drive education and awareness to mitigate, hate crimes, right? It's about gender equity, for women and for everyone, right? We talk about allies, partners, LGBTQIA+, as allies. We have a commitment, equal pay. Every dollar a man earns, the same goes to every woman in our company. Because that's something that Mastercard came out, a couple of years ago, talking about gender balance and pay equity, right, for that. So I think all of these, kind of programs, initiatives, continue to drive that culture, inclusion, and at the end of the day, accountability that we talked about, and you mentioned also, TJ. And I think and there, it's something that started a couple of years ago, where we all are talking about ESG and the importance of ESG, the social governance, environment. First, it started with our senior leaders. Their pay was tied to our ESG commitment. A year or two ago, we made it for all of our employees globally. Our pay is tied to ESG commitments and goals, right? Fantastic. A portion of that. So I think these are the kind of things that help drive, that inclusion and that sense of belonging.
Thank you, Ravi. As an ombuds, when you spoke to feedback culture, it spoke to my heart there. I think that's one of the opportunities we have, is to feel safe to speak up. And so I love that Mastercard is emphasizing that too. Well, last but not least, and we have a lot to share, but we don't have enough time. So I'll ask, if you can, I'm going to start with Handel. And our next question, and we only have 2 minutes each. Hopefully that's the right one. Oh, sorry. Looks like I'm going to go to the question and the wrong matching slide here. So we'd love to hear your personal story. It's a two-part question. So what advice would you give yourself at the beginning of your career, and why? And what solutions do you feel are necessary to overcome barriers to AAPI talent in the workplace?
I think I would have. What would I tell myself when I was young? Study harder. Get
so I didn't
grades.
say you're not young now. I didn't mean that.
No,
Younger.
I think the perspective. I would tell myself the perspective, and you have to understand a reality is, if you really want to make change and do things that are important, is and important to yourself or society, is you must you have to work hard, you have to achieve things, earn credibility, but that is not an end in itself. Those things are the chips that you have to pay to play. You have to play. And you're not going to get a seat at the table to play unless you have chips. Credibility, achievements, then you get respect, then you can do things. And I mean, so example at Smithsonian, I think I got in that position as vice chair because I raised money for them, and they were very happy. But so number one. Number two, Peter Principle. I believe in it, but not in a cynical manner. But I think it's interesting in a very optimistic, forward-looking manner, and it relates to the first. You get to a position where you're least competent, but you're there because of what you have done significantly. But that gives you the opportunity to do something new, something innovative, and you're kind of forced to do that. And I think it's important to grasp that as something that is so exciting. It's kind of scary, but it is exciting, and that is when you become the most potentially innovative, creative, and I think it releases you from certain boundaries that you thought that you may have had in the past. And I think that, so going back to the Smithsonian or the National Museum concept or our mission, I think, starting up this Friends organization, I've never been involved with founding and starting up and working like this with a not-for-profit. I'm learning so much, and it's just very fulfilling and thrilling to use this platform to drive, to try to achieve something that I believe is, our communities really need to have. But I feel a sense of professional I'm not satisfied yet because we had a lot of work, but I feel a lot of energy and excitement with what we're doing. And again, I'm in a position that I've never been in before, and so the Peter Principle.
Thank you very much. Ravi, what would you say to yourself at the beginning of your career now?
Thank you, Sana. A couple of things. One of the things, and is that really resonated with me. I mean, and I think I saw Medtronic as one of the sponsors here, and they can relate. Their former CEO, Bill George, right, had a book on True North. Yeah. So, and I think that was a fantastic, about, your authenticity and authentic leadership, right? And I think that it is about, understanding and reflecting on what your true north is, right? And following that as a passion. And I think that, then there are so many other, aspects in terms of, being courageous and thoughtful risks, right? Not just, careless, but thoughtful risks, and plan it, moving out of your comfort zone. Because I myself reflect, I'm an engineer by education, and like most Indians are, I guess, or a doctor. But but that paradigm's shifting, right? I think, and rightfully so. And I think, but then to dabbling into and having the opportunity within an organization and going at it with, from in product area to a risk area to now kind of responsible for, public policy and government relations, right? Something that, did not really study for. But I think that those opportunities come up where, you've got to take those risks and thoughtful risks, and move out of your comfort zone. So have that sense of urgency, sense of balance. Rarely are you going to have that perfect information, but you have to have humility to realize that, you don't have all the answers, but then, we can learn something, from everybody. So that's got to be a mantra. One of the other things is, we all, and this is something our former CEO, Ajay would talks about a lot, is that, there's the IQ, EQ, but there is also the DQ, which is the decency quotient. That is very, very important, in your journey. And I think that, that, and, creating your own board, build your own board of your sponsors, mentors, both within and outside, the organization, and kind of be proud of who you are and embrace that. That's kind of very important. And I think that, in terms of some of the things that I've seen, for example, is, we have a campaign called Seat at the Table. Right? And which is all about getting everyone's perspective. So, organizing more and more forums, in different groups where you talk about seat at this table so that it brings everybody's perspectives in is kind of very important. Having those intersectional conversations is important. And, business resource group engagement. We have 9 business resource groups. I think we have, 130 plus BRG chapters global in 49 locations globally. We are an employee base of about 28,000 people. About 11,000 of our employees belong to BRGs, right? And I think that and even I would say belonging to multiple BRGs is kind of important because you take away so much from those conversations and interactions.
Thank you.
Those are some of the thoughts I would share.
Thank you very much. And Shihana.
Thank you, Sana. Yes, my younger self, I'm thinking about it. Each of us has our own journeys, that defines what you're going to say to your younger self. I'm coming from Sri Lanka. Parents say, study hard, you get it. So that's the model I was raised in. So I got it until such time. I'm also engineer, by the way. Then I also did public administration after coming to UN. So as an engineer, I joined the UN in Bangkok to work on the Asian Highway and Trans-Asian Railway. Then when you come to the UN, you become specialization to generalize because UN's role is not really focusing on details, but bring everybody together, collaborative, communicative approach, right? Then when I joined, I was so excited. I thought this is ideal place, which preaches here in the charter. Charter says you are respected, you are equal, men and women can do everything, you have the potential, you will be nurtured. But that's not the case. Every day, every year, I get surprised. Still, I get surprised by deviation from this. Yes, we have made some progress for the world, but we are not there. It's a fantastic, everlasting document. I couldn't believe 77 years ago they put it together. Still, we couldn't realize, but it's still valid. But I would say, my younger self, do not think that you will not be discriminated. Do not think the ideals will happen to you. Expect the surprise. The world will not treat you equally. United Nations as your organization will not treat equally. If that happens, if you are not recognized, your contribution is not recognized, if you are not respected, if you are not treated equally, speak up. Don't wait. I waited sometimes. Sometimes as an Asian, you are very careful to make any big noise. We follow the rules, and that is very Asian if you think about it. We think, oh, no, it's only me. Should I talk to another Asian? No, it's not happening to him. Don't talk. So talk, fine, there's patterns. If it happens to you, it happened to another person too. It's not you're creating it. Your perception is important. Do something. And also if you see a gap, in your treatment from the outside world or your organization or your managers, just try to do something. Don't wait for somebody else to do. If you don't do, nobody else is going to do. That's what I would say to myself, right? Then the few things I want to talk to you guys, all the Asian community, to help us each other. If you don't have an interest group, staff interest group, talking for you, your community, any community, create it soon. I didn't do it 20 years ago. I took so long. Then we worked hard and we created, after 76 years of birth of the UN, I have been 20 years there, from 56 to 76. I didn't do anything. Then only we created 2021 after 3-4 years of groundwork. It's not easy to bring Asians together also. They're very careful. Is it a conflict of interest? They always ask. I have to answer. So number 2, if you create or if you don't create, speak up. No, don't wait. Have the visibility, as everybody said it, and have a global attention, local attention, national attention. Speak up. That is very important. The other thing is, if you have one interest group, collaborate, find common goals with other groups. That is very important within the organization, outside. That's why I'm here. I try hard to connect with the Asia Society. Chris knows.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, 2 more, and I recognize we're kind of over time here, but we really want to hear from you. So please, TJ, what would you like to share?
Sure. Younger self started my career. I would say I would tell myself not to take it too seriously, like to take a breather. It was just celebrated Mother's Day. Listen and remember what your mom taught you is what I would have told
just like
myself.
Megan Trainor, right?
Exactly. Just keep it simple. Like, number 1, make friends, right? Like, we are a community. Make friends. Have someone's back. 2 is share. Make sure that whatever is given to you, whatever is like scarce for you or generous for you, share that. And then lastly, speak up and fix things when things are broken, right? So like we learned that in kindergarten. If there's something wrong when you're playing with someone, you raise your hand, you try to fix things. So I would say those are the 3 things I would tell myself. And I think in corporate America, we try to sometimes like add a lot of like bigger words and all of those, but in reality, I think COVID has really taught us to it's really back to basics and it's back to humanity.
Thank you. And Bhavana, last but not least.
Thank you. So I would echo a lot of the sentiments that have been shared around the table, but I guess I have 2 very specific items that I would have told myself early in my career. The first is building genuine and trusted relationships, and the second is diplomatic advocacy. We talk about the relationships. We talk a lot about mentoring and networking, and that's all very important, but it's really the individual relationships that you develop over time where you're not really expecting something from people with whom you're building those relationships, but those relationships really have a huge impact on your career. All the career moves I've made have been due to those relationships built over a period of time. Also taking risks. That's a lot easier when you know you've got a support system. And with diplomatic advocacy, it's all about, yes, learning to speak up, but also learning how to do it. And that's really important because we can speak, get out of our comfort zone, speak loudly, but it's also learning what to say and when to say it so that the message is received and acted upon. And so those would be the two things. I would say, back to Marriott, we do so much in terms of activations, ARGs, leadership development, mentoring. But like any other company and any other culture of inclusiveness, you always have to evolve and you always have to listen and learn and create and act with the times, right? And so being part of the Asia Society, for example, gives us an opportunity to learn from each other and really create a culture where everyone can thrive professionally and personally.
Thank you so much. What an amazing panel. Thank you all so much for joining us today. First of all, say thank you to the panel. Let's give them a round of applause.